The trap of being too nice. From the moment we are children, we are told that kindness is the highest virtue. We are taught to smile when we want to frown, to agree when we long to refuse, and to give when our hearts are already empty. The lesson is repeated so often that it becomes part of our very identity. A good person is always polite, agreeable, and selfless. But what if this definition of goodness is a trap? What if the very thing that earns us praise in the eyes of others quietly destroys us from within? Imagine for a moment how many times in your life you have said yes when everything in you wanted to say no. How many times you have carried the burdens of others until your back bent and your spirit grew weary. The world applauds you as kind, yet inside you feel unseen, unvalued, and invisible. This is the paradox of being too nice. Welcome to Buddha Story. Today, we will journey into one of the most misunderstood illusions in human life, the illusion that constant niceness leads to love, happiness, and peace. It does not. Instead, it often leads to exhaustion, resentment, and the silent erosion of the self. If you stay with me until the end, you will see why true kindness begins not with pleasing others, but with respecting yourself. Before we continue, I invite you to subscribe to this channel to support us in bringing more of these profound explorations to life. Your support gives us the strength to continue creating meaningful content for you. The trap of being too nice is not new. It has existed for centuries, even in the time of the Buddha. Let me share with you a story, though the names have been changed to remind us that these lessons are not bound to a single place or person. Long ago, there was a young novice monk named Ananda. He was admired by everyone for his willingness to serve. He cleaned the monastery, carried water for the elders, gave up his rest whenever someone called for him. At first, people loved him. They praised his devotion and spoke of his boundless compassion. But over time, his eyes grew hollow, his back bent with fatigue, and bitterness crept into his heart. One evening, after collapsing in the garden, he whispered to the abbot, "Master, why do I feel empty even though I have given everything?" The abbot replied, "Because you have mistaken exhaustion for compassion. True compassion does not consume you, it sustains you. If you burn yourself completely, what light will you have left to offer?" This story is not just about Ananda. It is about us. How often do we perform kindness not out of love, but out of fear? Fear that we will be rejected if we say no. Fear that we will be judged if we protect our time. Fear that we will lose love if we assert our needs. And so we surrender ourselves piece by piece until we no longer recognize the person in the mirror. There is another story, one that carries a sharper edge. Devadatta, a cousin of the Buddha, demanded that the Buddha step down and let him lead the community. A man trapped in the need to be nice might have yielded for the sake of harmony. But the Buddha refused. He saw that saying yes would not be compassion. It would be surrender to corruption. The lesson is clear. Kindness is not about pleasing everyone. Sometimes, kindness to truth, to integrity, and to the greater good requires the strength to say no. Modern life mirrors these ancient lessons. Think of the friend who always agrees to every request until people stop thanking her because her help is assumed. Think of the employee who never refuses extra work until his effort is taken for granted by a boss who no longer sees him as a human being, but as a resource. These lives echo the same melody. When kindness lacks boundaries, it loses its purity and becomes self-neglect. The Buddha taught the middle way, a path between extremes. He compared life to the strings of a lute. If the strings are pulled too tight, they snap. If they are too loose, they produce no sound. Balance creates harmony. In the same way, compassion that is too tight, suffocating yourself for others, will break you. Compassion that is too loose, ignoring others entirely, creates emptiness. Only when balanced does compassion sing with beauty. To understand the trap of being too nice is to uncover the truth that much of our niceness is not pure compassion, but a transaction. We give because we hope to receive approval. We agree because we fear rejection. We sacrifice not out of love, but out of insecurity. And when approval does not come, or when it fades as it always does, we are left drained and resentful. This is not the path of peace. The solution is not to abandon kindness, but to root it in self-respect. To ask ourselves, am I giving from a place of strength, or am I giving because I'm afraid? Am I saying yes because it is my truth, or because I am terrified of saying no? When we answer these questions honestly, we begin to free ourselves. True kindness never demands the death of the self. It flourishes when we honor ourselves first. Let us return for a moment to Ananda, the novice monk. After his collapse, the abbot instructed him to rest, to meditate, to remember that his own heart needed care. Slowly, Ananda learned that service must flow from fullness, not emptiness. When he served again, he did so with joy, not resentment. And those who received his kindness felt the difference. His kindness was no longer a desperate cry for approval. It was a gift. And so we arrive at a choice. Each of us can continue living in the trap, saying yes to everyone until nothing is left. Or we can learn the harder, braver path, to give from balance, to say no when needed, and to treat our own life as worthy of compassion. Remember, the Buddha himself did not yield to every demand. He knew that to serve wisely is greater than to serve endlessly. Now, I would like to leave you with a question to reflect upon. Please write your answer in the comments below. Imagine a friend asks you for help at a time when you are already exhausted and need rest. Do you A, say yes, even though you are drained because you fear disappointing them? B, say no with honesty, protecting your own well-being so that you can help from strength another time? Comment A or B below, and let us see together how we each walk this delicate line between kindness and self-respect, breaking free and living authentically. There comes a moment in every life when the exhaustion of pleasing others becomes too heavy to carry, when the smile that once felt natural becomes an unbearable mask, and when the longing to be true outweighs the fear of rejection. This is the turning point, the silent awakening that whispers, you do not need to live trapped in the cycle of approval. To break free from the trap of being too nice is not to abandon kindness, but to reclaim it, to give it roots in self-respect and branches that reach toward authenticity. The first step is the courage to draw boundaries. Many people imagine boundaries as walls, thick and unyielding. But in truth, they are more like the shoreline that meets the sea. The shore does not reject the water, yet it defines where the ocean ends and where the land begins. Without the shore, the water floods and destroys. With it, the water nourishes and sustains. Boundaries are not a rejection of love, but the framework that allows love to flourish. When you say to another, I cannot give more than this, you are not closing the door. You are protecting your energy so that what you do give carries sincerity and strength. There was once a teacher named Samuel who devoted his life to his students. He answered every call, read every draft, and solved every problem. For years he was admired, but inside he was crumbling. When his health finally failed, he realized that in trying to serve everyone he had served no one well, least of all himself. From his recovery bed, he began to practice the art of boundary. He learned to say, I cannot meet today, but I can help you tomorrow. He learned that the students who valued him accepted these boundaries, while those who only sought to exploit him disappeared. His teaching became sharper, his compassion more genuine, and his presence more alive. In respecting himself, he regained the power to guide others. Boundaries alone, however, are not enough. To break free requires mastering the art of saying no without guilt. This is perhaps the hardest lesson of all, because for those who have spent years chained to niceness, every no feels like a betrayal. Yet no is not the opposite of kindness. It is its guardian. No protects the fragile spaces of rest, of reflection, of renewal, so that yes can once again carry the weight of truth. Consider the example of Helena, a nurse who never refused an extra shift. Her colleagues admired her dedication, but her children knew a different reality. A mother too tired to smile, too drained to listen, too worn to live fully. The day she finally said no to her supervisor was the day she began to return home, not just in body, but in spirit. The guilt she feared dissolved quickly, replaced by respect from colleagues who saw her strength. Saying no is never easy, but it is the language through which we reclaim our time, our dignity, and our right to live. Yet behind the difficulty of no lies something deeper, the addiction to approval. This is the true root of the trap of being too nice. When our worth is measured by how many people smile at us, how many praises we collect, or how many times we are thanked, we are like leaves blown by the wind. Praise lifts us for a moment, but the absence of it throws us into despair. The Buddha taught that a person unmoved by praise or blame is the one who has found peace. To break free, we must shift from living for approval to living from integrity. Take the story of Marcus, a young artist who shaped every painting according to the opinions of others. His work pleased many, but he felt no joy. One day, he decided to paint for himself, to let the canvas carry his own vision. Critics rejected him, buyers abandoned him, but within the solitude of authenticity, he found freedom. Years later, those same paintings became celebrated, not because they fit the taste of the crowd, but because they bore the unmistakable stamp of truth. Marcus learned that approval is fleeting, but authenticity endures. Living authentically means embracing our imperfections. Too often, we hide the parts of ourselves that we fear will push others away. We polish our image until it no longer resembles who we are. But imperfection is not failure. It is the rawness of humanity, the cracks where light enters. There is an ancient Japanese art called kintsugi, where broken pottery is repaired with gold, the cracks highlighted rather than hidden. The repaired bowl is more valuable than before. In the same way, when we accept our flaws and carry them with courage, we do not diminish our worth, we deepen it. There was once a woman named Laura who concealed her past mistakes for years, terrified that they would make her unworthy of love. Yet the day she shared them openly, something extraordinary happened. Instead of turning away, her friends drew closer. They told her that her honesty gave them permission to be honest too. By embracing her cracks, she allowed others to embrace theirs. Authenticity is contagious, and when you dare to live it, you give others the courage to do the same. Of course, the fear of rejection still lingers. Many stay trapped in niceness because they believe that rejection will destroy them. But rejection is not death. It is simply redirection. When someone leaves because you are authentic, they were never meant to stay. Each rejection carves away what is false and brings you closer to what is true. The people who remain will be those who value not the mask you wear, but the soul you reveal. To live without apology is the final step. This does not mean arrogance or carelessness. It means no longer explaining away your dreams, your needs, or your voice. It means no longer shrinking so that others may feel tall. It means standing in the quiet certainty that you are enough. You are worthy, not because you please everyone, but because you exist, whole and real. When you live without apology, life itself changes. The masks fall away, the performance ends, and the world finally meets the person you were always meant to be. This is not an easy journey. It demands courage, discipline, and faith, but the reward is profound. A life where kindness flows from choice, not compulsion. A life where compassion sustains rather than destroys. A life where authenticity replaces approval and peace replaces fear. Breaking free from the trap of being too nice is not about becoming harsh or selfish. It is about discovering that true kindness is inseparable from self-love. When you honor yourself, your yes becomes more powerful, your no becomes more honest, and your love becomes more enduring. And in that moment, you no longer live as a shadow chasing the approval of others. You live as yourself, radiant, authentic, and free.